Hello and welcome to the Board Leadership Forum. It's a real pleasure to have everybody with us. I'm Shane Phillips, the CEO of the Phillips Group, and we have an amazing lineup for you this afternoon. We have quite a few people still coming in as we get started. And this is the fifth edition of the Board Leadership Forum, hosted obviously by the Phillips Group in conjunction with our partner, Haukama, the Institute of Governance. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Phillips Group, we're an executive search firm, and we specialize in board and CEO placements. We were founded in Canada in 1984. We've been working in the Middle East since 2008. And over the last 17 years, we have not witnessed a more dynamic and changing board environment than we have in the last few. And some of the key trends that we're really seeing across the region in the GCC is the boards and the family groups really working towards an IPO readiness narrative that seems to be sweeping across the region and instilling stronger corporate governance across their boards. There's also a very strong digitization and digital competence requirement at the board level, and which just has been driving some of the NED selection that we've seen. And I think as we had you waiting, we had some notes from Faris Akkad from Meta, who's definitely been benefiting from that trend as he's been placed on various boards that help them with their digital agenda. And of course, ESG is a growing narrative in our boardrooms across the region, and that's also globally. But don't take it from me. Let's hear it from some of the best practitioners across the region, some of the strongest board members. We have a smashing list of speakers in the next 2 power hours, as I like to refer to them. And with no further ado, let me get started with our first speaker, who was kind enough to lend some of his time, and really excited to hear him speak. Please allow me to introduce the Honorable Mr. Mishal Kanoo, who is chairman of the Kanoo Group. He's also been recognized as one of the 100 most powerful Arabs by Forbes. He's chairman and director of various reputable companies, including Gulf Capital, KHK and Partners Limited, Dalma Capital, and CAF Investments. Mishal has grown up in the United Arab Emirates, and he finished schooling in Dubai, thereafter obtaining 2 MBAs, one in finance from the University of St. Thomas in Texas, and one from the American University in Sharjah. And he began his career with the family business before getting his first master's degrees. Please welcome the one, the only Mr. Mishal Kanoo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, good afternoon to you and to everyone. Thanks, Shane.
It's a pleasure to see you, and it's been obviously quite an iconic brand, and you're probably one of the largest and oldest family groups in the region, in a region where 80% of the GDP is from family groups. So I don't think there's anyone who hasn't come across your group or interacted or consumed your services or products in one way or another. Maybe you could tell us a little bit what it was like growing up and how your journey kind of got to this point where you are today.
Sure. Growing up in the 70s here in the UAE was a very familiar feeling, because the city, I think at that time, was maybe had a population of about 300,000 thereabouts, and literally everybody knew everybody. So when somebody was doing something, everybody knew about what he or she was into, and everyone had his own space and had his own direction in terms of what things were being done. And this is what I was growing up watching my father in terms of his interaction within the business, in terms of creating what he did, interacting with the different families within the region, be it in Abu Dhabi, be it here, be it in Dubai, be it in Sharjah, and also interacting with the different rulers of the different emirates. So you get a nice mix in terms of how things are moving. The jump actually starts to happen when I come back from university. So until I go to university, it's pretty much moving, plodding along, nothing significant. It's generic growth. Dubai is becoming a more significant city with the rise of, actually, I think the introduction of Emirates Airlines as a focal point for people to come to Dubai starts to actually creates the sea change that we started to see when we started realizing what's happening here in the UAE. Sorry, in Dubai, specifically in Dubai. The UAE picks up at a different pace. So I graduate here in 1986. I go to do my university in Houston, Texas. I come back. I worked with my father for about a year and a half. And I reached the point which I think a lot of family members would have, which would be a clash between the two generations, between what my father and the way he looks at things in terms of business and the way I look at things. And I said to him, you know what, again, to avoid the clash, I think I should go get a master's degree. His response to me was, you don't need a master's degree. I'll teach you a master's degree over here. I'm thinking, yes, I'm pretty sure you will, but I'm not too sure we'll survive one another. So I did leave for about a year. And in the meantime, my father passed away. And I came back. I wanted to complete a double degree in my master's, which was supposed to be finance and marketing. I couldn't complete the second one because of my father's passing away. So I came back, started working with the family. My cousin, one of my elder cousins, suggested, why don't you go work for Arthur Andersen? It gives you a way to look into how things are functioning, working in other companies, and you have a better idea in terms of how to understand what it's like to work in other businesses. And unintentionally, the thing that I benefited from is not necessarily seeing how other companies function, but it also means that here I am in a company where my last name and my interaction, so my position as a family member, means nothing. And so therefore I had to start learning how to interact with people from a very social perspective, understanding I'm not going to get my way every time. Things don't happen just because I happen to say what I'm saying is correct because I happen to be a member of my family business. And I started to realize these things. In fact, I got one of the bigger wake-up calls as I started to realize one of my managers, whom I would meet up later, who was working with Arthur Andersen, had a tendency to wait. It's 9 to 5, and he'd wait to about 4:30, and then he said, "Oh, by the way, I have this project I'm working on. Can you sit and work with me?" It was myself and two other juniors, and it'll keep us up to like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. And the thing is, do you ask for the overtime and look like you're not playing ball within the organization, or are you a person who plays ball within an organization and people then start saying, this is a guy I want to work with? Now, from my perspective, I wanted to understand how does this work, because until that point, I have always been on the other side, telling people, could you work extra time? And now it flipped over, and I started realizing, so I'm actually into people's time, and I started realizing, okay, how do people interact with one another? And it starts to give me a bit different dynamic and different understanding in terms of how things function. By the way, before we continue, post the Arthur Andersen, I come in and work as the deputy chairman within the organization, and eventually 2017, I think, become the chairman. But to the one interesting aspect in terms of the university, because I went to a Catholic university in a Protestant state in the US, which is a very strange thing, because I started realizing a few things that what we had understood in this part of the world, when I went over to a different part of the world, few things. One, it's not homogeneous. So the US, what people think, this part of the world prior to going, think it's a homogeneous body. They're all the same. No, they're not. So that's a differentiation that starts to filter into my head. For my professor, she was a linguistic professor, starts explaining to me that for an American audience, usually a Western audience, the power of 3 is a magic. Meaning, when you present something, make sure it's 3 points or 3 ideas or 3 things, because for some strange reason it works in the Western mindset. I started to realize this. Oh my God! So we have these differences. Now, they're not necessarily a bad thing, but it's interesting to be able to understand, because of you understand these nuances, you can then work with people in a different way than you would work. So this culture has this method to work. I work with them this way. This culture has this method to work. I work with them this way. And it gives me a better and broader understanding of how things work. And it's not cut and dry, black and white, the way people present it at the university.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because I guess on the other side, being growing up in a Christian environment, there obviously I've been here a long time and I know it's not the case, but there's also this idea that the Muslim world is kind of homogenous, but obviously quite not the case. So it's interesting to hear you say that. So interesting experience overseas, and then. So then you come back after graduating, and then what happens?
The interesting thing is, when coming from university, prior to going to university, the way that things are managed in this part of the world, and at least the way that was visible to me, was there was a top-down management, meaning I tell you, you do, right? It's the autocratic methodology. And at university, you get to understand different concepts and different ideas. And one of the concepts I pick up from the university is the idea of consultative management, meaning you allow people to be responsible instead of you dictating and overseeing every aspect of his or her life. You set goals, you overlook it, and every once in a while to check, to verify, to see that they are on the right track. And you make sure that people who, if you're going to give them authority, there has to be responsibility with it. I cannot just say, oh, you know what, I like him or I like her, he or she can do whatever he or she wants. No. There are certain guidelines, certain ideas, and when I expect you to do something, I basically treat you as an adult rather than a child, because I supervise you supervise children, right? But you don't manage children, you manage adults. You start to say, okay, well, you have this task to do, you have this task to do, you have this task to do. Go and do them. I don't need to oversee you and overlook you every time you do something. You know what's the worst thing that, and I tell this, I even tell this to my kids, because it's something that it's human nature. And yet we do this in the business. This is the thing that I started realizing, and I think, hey, you know what? I don't want this. I want to shift this. And when I work in my group, in the family, I want to shift this mentality. And the mentality is, okay, imagine yourself as a student. You're in an exam. You're doing your exam, and you're writing whatever the test is. And the worst thing that could happen is the teacher hovers over your head and looks at you. Doesn't say anything, just hovers over your head. And now all you're thinking is, what does he or she think? Am I doing it right? Is this correct? So instead of moving forward and trying to finish things and getting things done, you're stuck in what this person who's overlooking you thinks about that exact point. And that's what we do when you have an autocratic mindset, authoritarian mindset. That's what it does. It keeps people constantly in a state of panic, not being able to move forward. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is, okay, you know what? People will make mistakes. That's fine. Make a mistake. There's a certain type of mistakes you can make, large ones, small ones. We can learn from it. We can understand it. Now, to make a mistake is fine, but to learn from that mistake is what the whole aim of it. Because once you do that, then you won't repeat it. But if you don't learn from it, you'll repeat it again, which we don't want. So for me, the idea is, okay, let's take away this autocratic mindset and let's give them more responsibility. Let me treat them as an adult. Okay. Once you treat the person as an adult and say, okay, here's your responsibility. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do this. I authorize you to do this, but you're responsible to then do what you're supposed to do. And I will hold you accountable for what you have done or not done based on you being an adult. Right? This allows you to be able to expand your view and your ability. Because if you're just going to overlook everybody's action all the time, well, there's one person, and how much time can you spend on everybody? You limit your business. You can't do that. So that was a mindset that had to shift and change. The other one is, again, I want people to benefit. the one thing we used to have was just something that was within the organization was a very limited in terms of how much bonus or how much salary we could give people. We would cap it. And I was like, it doesn't work that way. Because if somebody is going to work really hard and produce more and he or she is capped, well, the reason is why would I produce more if I'm already capped? So you think is, okay, we need to shift this idea. We need to give people more ability to benefit. The more you benefit, the more the company benefits. That's a simple idea. So these shifts start to happen within an organization, within the organization, and you start to see the results. Those are a few things that I see what you call had happened. Again, I'm not going to be arrogant to say, oh, it's my work. No, it's a collective work, by the way. It's a collective between whether it's the board members, whether it's the management leadership, whether it's the people involved. Everybody had to be part and parcel, and you have to sell the idea. See, this is the thing. A lot of people think, no, I will dictate and people will do. It doesn't work that way. It never worked that way. It works for a short time solely because you're scaring the living hell out of people. But you know what? The moment you go away, the whole thing collapses. We don't want that. We want sustainability. People are talking about ESG. Sustainability for businesses has been part and parcel of family businesses for the longest time. So for any family business who wants to look at sustainability, we need to set up rules and regulations and structures that allow things to grow and not be held down because of a fear factor, which when people do that is a mistake. But that's my opinion.
Can I ask you a personal question? Because you touched on your father, and of course, for many of us, we've had a similar experience. And now, kind of, you look at at that time you left to go do your master's. And then of course you had sorry for your loss. Would you played it differently now when you look back, or do you feel would have been a worse result maybe, if, I had the same thing, obviously, me and my father, if you push that, sometimes it could end a lot worse than what it did, or was it the right way, or what's your thinking on that?
There's no way I could tell you whether it would go this scenario or that scenario, because at the end of the day, there's so many factors that play in. It would have been different, that's for sure. But how different? As in positive different, negative different, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. I can't tell you, because that's in the world of the unknown. So for me, I don't try to what you call speculate on that aspect, because in the realm of possibilities, anything's possible. In the realm of probabilities, things become a bit more narrow. So I can't guess, and I don't want to, and I wouldn't want to guess. From a personal perspective, would I have loved to have been with my father longer? Would I have loved to have been working with my father longer? I don't know. There's a lot I could have learned from him, but I'm pretty sure I would have clashed a hell of a lot with him. So I don't know. Would I, from again, personal perspective, would I love to have my father around? Yeah, the answer is yes. Of course I would. Would I have been able to learn what I had learned because he was around? Probably no. And the reason I say it, because one of the things that fathers do, be it in a business or otherwise, is to protect. So there are things that you might encounter, you could encounter, that he would block to ensure that you don't get harmed. So if that happens, you don't get to learn, you don't get experience. Pain, failure is also a learning experience, and something we need to go through to become better. Again, as long as we understand that that's not a permanent state. So if my father was around, probably would have blocked these things from coming towards me, not in to be bad with me, but actually to fulfill his role as a father, to protect me. It's only after he goes away, and then all of a sudden, I'm free game, if you want. And I have my uncles from one side and my cousins from the other side, and people from outside the business, and everybody who you call thinking, he's an easy, what you call it, target. Let's go after him. Then you start to learn different aspects, how to work politics, how to be diplomatic, when to stand up for your right, when to give in, even if you're right, give in to arguments, just to let things move smoothly, when to fight, when to let it pass, when somebody insults you, do you fight every insult, or do you let some of them slide because it's really not worth it? You start to learn these things. But if I had my father around me, most of these things would probably not come towards me. And I, by the way, I see this I have elder cousins whose fathers are still around. Cousins who are in their 40s and some in the 50s, whose fathers are still around. Their cousins too. And because their father does that, is shielding for them, they don't know what it's like to be in the real world per se. So they feel that every time something goes wrong, they have someone to fall back on and go complain to. Yeah, well, that will not be the case when the father goes away. And so I think because it happened to me at an early age, I got to learn a lot more faster. Whether it was good or bad, I don't know, but a lot more faster. Long answer to a very small question. Would I want my father back? The answer is yes. Would it have been different? I don't know.
And so it's almost like if I were to read, how what you're saying is that you can't learn to ride a bike without falling off with the training wheels on. And so it's almost like the father's protecting, stopping you from failing. So the ability to fall down, scrape your knee in business, it's almost like part of your success is your ability to fail. And when you're talking about some of the culture changes you're doing, was to say to remove this kind of autocratic culture to allow your employees also to fail. Is that part of your kind of success stalwarts is, hey, we need to be able to fail? Is that part of your success story?
Well, it's not to encourage people to fail. Let's put it that way. But should a project not go through? Should something bad happen? The key is, okay, it happened. So instead of parceling blame and shouting at person and saying you're the fault, and which a lot of autocrats will do. Yeah, okay. We know a situation has happened. What do we do now? How do we fix it? How do we address this? You, the person who was leading the charge that this happened, what did you learn? How can we learn and put this so that we don't experience this in the future? It's trying to understand these things. Again, there is the other issue, which when a lot of people experience these things, what they start to do is they start building up a lot of layers so that you don't go through this. The problem is these layers also block you from business. So I need to get the accounts to agree. I need to get the the board to agree. I need this, and you put layers and layers and layers. Well, that doesn't work. I need to say, okay, you know what? We need to monitor these things until we understand what happened and how to fix these things. Once you know and have a better understanding, then you give them the opportunity to try to fix these things and they will feel a feeling of self-fulfillment, which is very important. A lot of people want to take that away. In business, when we're interacting with humans, I don't care what level, but we're interacting with humans. And the one thing you must do is give that person his or her due. They are not a clog in a machine. And if you treat them as a clog in a machine, that's exactly what you're going to get, a clog in the machine. And they will not go above and beyond. They will not try. They will not do. I can't scare. Imagine if every time your kid fell on his knee, a child is a toddler and is learning to stand up. And every time it fell on his knee, you shouted at the child and said, how could you do this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? What's the next step in the child's mind? I'm not going to try to stand up. Why should I stand up? Because if I try to stand up, I know I'm going to fall and I'm going to get shouted at. So I don't do it. We need to remove this mindset within an organization and say, you know what? Fall, it hurts. Did you learn from the hurt? Okay, what's the next step? So instead of trying to stand up, try to stand up by holding something. Try to stand up by asking help in this manner. The mother or the father holds them by the fingers. So you're trying to understand so that even if you do fall next time, first the fall is lighter, and second, you don't get afraid about trying to stand up. And we need to take that mindset into an organization and to tell the people who work within an organization, you know what? These things are going to happen. There's no linear trajectory in anything. It just doesn't happen. It's always ups and downs, blips. So we need to make sure when the blip happens, that the first one might be a large one because we don't have the understanding or the knowledge, but the second one is a smaller blip, and eventually the blips smooth themselves out. That's what we need to do with people within an organization, and to give them enough confidence to want to try. Because if we don't do that, they're never going to try. And if they're the ones, if they're the face of the company, if they're the ones, the ambassadors of the company, if they're the ones who are doing the business, and they don't try, well, what will happen with the business?
And so, I mean, that's, obviously helping empower your staff. And then I guess on the negative, can that flow too far where maybe we have people who have been around too long and we're not, I guess one of the kind of hallmarks of the, Middle Eastern business is that story of, the employee whose father worked for the patriarch's father who worked for his father. So you have like three generations, which is always a beautiful thing to see. And then if you contrast that with kind of the North American corporate model where it's you're underperforming, or what's the kind of historic GE model under Jack Welch, where 25% of the staff was constantly called in order to drive peak performance. Um, are you going towards a country club now where people feel they can't get terminated, and how does that play into your ability to drive peak performance of the team if they don't feel that people are getting pushed on enough, or pushed out?
There's a balance, and any business will have to look at this balance. It would be it a family business or a non-family business, and my focus will be on family businesses. And the key in this word is family, and I don't mean blood relatives. I mean family, people who are part and parcel of what you're doing. They're family. They have become a family. People you're interacting with and talking to, so just because they become less productive, I throw them out. Does make sense? But a lot of productivity push is towards that. So a person becomes, we are all going to grow older. There's no one that's going to grow younger. So we're all going to grow older. We're all going to become less physically productive. Now, mentally, maybe our capacity might be even better, but physically, we're going to become less productive. So just because a person becomes less productive, I throw him or her out. Does that make sense? But that's the direction that we are moving towards. I want more productivity, more. All right. So I make 100 million, 10 million. Now pick whatever number, and the currency really doesn't matter. So you make 11 million instead of 10 million. You make 12 million instead of 10 million. But at the cost of 12 to increase those 2 million extra, just 20%. I'm removing 20% of the work staff, of the workforce. So those are 20% whose lives are going to affect their families. So that I make that bit more. I'm sorry, this is not what we should be doing. I'm sad to say in terms of the global productivity and all that, that's where it's moving towards. But I feel this is a very strange thing. There's an argument happening right now, by the way. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe Meta is decreasing its staff by a certain percentage. And the founder, I can't remember his name. Zuckerberg, Mr. Zuckerberg, is going to get a higher salary or something like that. Why? What does he need it for? Those people who have lost a job have a family to take care of, have a mortgage that they have illnesses, they have parents. Why should they be out of a job just so that this person increases? And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not criticizing him. It's just I'm giving it as an example because of something I read recently. So why should I give the company that bit more while costing it hell of a lot more people in lives? The whole purpose of a business is not to make my banker happy. I'm pretty sure I have a few bankers who are unhappy with what I'm about to say. But it's not to make my banker happy. It's to make life better. Everybody's life better. Not just mine. Everybody. Because we all contribute to it. So is it worth that much more to increase the bottom line by this much by affecting other people's lives by that much. For me, it makes no sense. So while I do want to have a bit more, I want a better result, you need to push people. You need to push people to make them do more. I push myself, I push my kids, and within an organization, you're constantly pushing them. You need to do that. That's not bad. You're adding a bit of pressure. Make people do more. Fine. But not to the point that if they don't do, or just because you want a bit more, you make other people suffer. No, that makes no sense. But sadly, this is the way direction a lot of companies are going towards. And if you are a public listed company, the pressure to do that is a hell of a lot more than if you're a closed company.
Right. One of the interesting things that we talked about is your approach as a board member and the way you utilize formal versus informal channels of communication to kind of drive performance in the assets that you look over. Can you maybe tell us your thoughts about that and which channels you feel are more effective than others as a board member? What should we be doing? How should we be communicating with those with our management teams?
I think it's very important to understand that again, we have formal structures and we have informal structures. And I'm not talking about my company. I'm talking overall when people interact with different organizations, be it business, be it government, be it school. Every organization has formal straight lines, and then you have the dotted lines. Where business usually happens is along the dotted lines. In the background, where people are asking questions back and forth, talking to one another, explaining ideas. Because at that point, it's not formal. So I can change my mind. I can shift if I think this part works better than that part. And I can start to gather consensus indirectly. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. You want to understand these concepts better. Because when you do that, then you can start moving the company in a nice, subtle way towards the direction you want to go to. Because once you get to the formal aspect, then you put it down on paper, and it's either agreed or disagreed, whatever the case may be. And you don't want to have and I've been in this, you don't want to have shouting bouts at a board. You don't want to do that. But there are some people who, by their nature, can't help but want to cause an issue. And no matter what you're doing, whether you're using the formal method or the informal method, they're going to cause an issue. I don't know how to interact with them per se. I try to avoid them. Yeah, but the more you can do it informally, you can also get other people involved who can maybe have an effect on person X, who is the disruptor, if you want. Now, don't get me wrong, disruptors are not bad. But a person who is disrupting for the sake of disrupting, and there are those, they're the ones you don't want. The ones who disrupt to help create a new understanding, a new view. That's what you want. It's sometimes better to take that aspect in an informal setting rather than a formal setting to allow the idea to flow. Because maybe it might be a great idea in culture X, but not in culture Y. So you need to make sure that this is done in an informal setting in the background. Once you have a consensus, then take it to the formal setting and then formalize it, ratify it. But it's understanding how to best work a room. See, this is something they don't teach you in university, which I wish they did. Networking. How to network. It's not just networking. How to network. How to be diplomatic. This is something we don't. No university. I have never come across. Maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't come across a university that teaches you how to be diplomatic in the way you talk. There are universities for diplomats, but no, I'm talking in terms of business sense. So how do I talk? As I said, there are times when maybe it's a good idea, but it's not worth pursuing right now because of a blockage, whatever the blockage may be. But keep that idea and revisit it later. Or maybe the other person is having a bad time and is not willing to listen. He or she might like the idea, but they're not ready to listen to it right now. again, these are small nuances that happen in the informal sphere that give you ability to create the consensus of the direction that you want to go, to be able to take it to the formal sphere. If you just focus on the formal sphere, well, you won't get much done, because everybody will be coming with his or her idea set, and then they come in. Now, if all of them have the same idea, which is great, fantastic, you move forward. If not, then you're going to have a lot of clashes. This is what you don't want to have.
And so, very, very interesting advice. And I almost wonder if the family boards have an advantage here, because I guess those informal settings kind of can come up naturally as in a family environment versus corporations. But I think our corporate board members do the same thing. You have your barbecues, your offsites, you have different events.
You're by the way, sorry, Shane, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're quite right. In terms of family structure, family businesses, there is an added advantage, because in a family business, there will be gatherings on I don't know, a Friday, or gatherings for a wedding, gatherings for a funeral, gatherings. These are informal gatherings, and there be my small blocks of 3 or 4 here, 2 or 3 here, and they're all sitting and interacting with one another. They're all talking to one another at different points, because they're all part of a family. So it makes it easier to get ideas filtered through. And there is the one other advantage, which a lot of people don't want to talk about. But if I want to get an idea through to person X, okay, forgive me if I use you as an example, if you don't mind. If I wanted to get an idea through to you, okay, let's say we were on a board together, and I think this is a good idea which might actually work, and for whatever reason you don't see what I see. Well, the informal setting would be, let's assume your daughter is in the business and your wife is not. Okay, this is my assumption. I will try first with your daughter to get the idea to you. Okay, because maybe I, as a vehicle, you don't want to hear from, but your daughter will get that idea to you. Maybe you are also resistant to her, as thinking, no, she's too young, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Then there is the other informal method, which is when we're sitting in together, luncheon, etc., and the families are together. I mentioned this idea to your wife, and I say how great this would be and how beneficial it would be for her son or her daughter, or for the family as a whole. And then she will put that in your head. She will bring that idea to your head. So again, these are informal channels that mostly will happen within a family business, that will not happen in a non-family business setting. But you can utilize these things to make things pass and go through. I'm not saying it as to be unfair or to bypass systems, but in some cases, especially when it's new ideas or ideas that are going to find a lot of resistance, you might need to look at the informal much more than the formal to get these ideas through, because otherwise they're never going to happen. And so that's why I think when you call it having within the setting within a family business is a bit more slightly easier to get the informal things done through rather than the formal. At the end of the day, there are 2 places, and I'm not going to mention one of them, but there are 2 places where men are extremely vulnerable. And one of those places is when he's about to sleep. And if his wife is unhappy with him, he's not going to sleep. And she's going to tell him, why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Why are you doing this? And you know what? Some cases, the resistance will break down just to make her happy. He'll do that. Again, this is an unfair, what you call a situation, but sometimes for things to move forward, you need to be unfair.
So those great points, and I think now for your role as a chairman, now you're forward-looking, you're really looking to the future. I think we spent a lot of this discussion talking about the past and how you've previously done things. Now, I mean, two of the big trends, AI, obviously the China plot line, how is that going to play out? Obviously, we see a lot more Chinese here in Dubai, and obviously they're doing very well on so many different fronts. What is it that is in your crosshairs as you look out on the horizon? What are some of the areas, maybe quagmires, opportunities that you're gunning for as we kind of lurch forward into the future now?
One of the biggest problems what we're going to encounter in this part of the world is our inability to understand the external forces that are going to hit us. We have this mindset that thinks, oh no, we are protected. We have certain rules and regulations and laws that protect us. I'm trying to explain that these things are a thing of the past in some of the cases, not because the laws are bad, no, but because there are ways to bypass this thing. So, for example, again, I'm not too sure if this is the case or not, but I'm going to throw it as an example. I don't know if Shein, I don't know how you pronounce it.
Shane, yeah, fine.
Or Temu are registered here in the UAE as a company. But I can guarantee you what they're doing for people in the certain retail businesses are scaring the living hell out of them, because I can now have it delivered from the manufacturing plant in China straight here for prices that I can't compete with. I just can't compete with. So do I need to have a registered company here? Or do I have to just have a delivery location and someone to deliver the product to? So I send it from there. I'm registered there, whatever there is. I deliver it here. And then somebody here as a logistics service provider delivers it to the end customer. That's it. I haven't done the sale. I haven't done the sale here in the UAE. Now, again, I'm not sure on terms of how the legality of it is concerned, but that's what is presently happening. How do I compete with that? Now, when you look at AI, most people are talking about AI and they say, oh, yeah, look, I have a chatbot on my website. Man, who cares? This is secondary. But I'm looking at, now, you know where AI kicks in? AI kicks in when you can use it to not only do predictive forecasting, which is important. That's where it kicks in. It also helps you in terms of how to become more productive with the people you currently have, or with the ideas you currently have, or with the products you currently have. Sometimes it will also direct you because, okay, I have God knows how many months or how many years of data. It's doing nothing. How do I take that data and utilize it through utilizing AI? What happens when you add IoT, Internet of Things, plus AI, and what's coming new and really frightening thought is quantum computing, and put those together, add a bit of robotics to it. Now, again, I don't know how many years this will be, 2 years, 20 years, 5 years, somewhere in between. But these shifts that are happening currently are going to have a dramatic effect on how our economies are going to be in the world, let alone in this point of the world. So, for example, let me give you an argument. If tomorrow I can do construction through robotics and through artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence for the design and the quantities, etc. I do all of these things, and the robotics builds the house. How many employees would I need? It will reduce, right? I also need less managers because I don't. How many managers do I need for this thing? I need one person to actually make sure everything is getting done. But other than that, it'll be done, because that's the whole purpose of this. Again, when will it be that perfect? I don't know, but it's moving towards all of that. What will happen to the population here? The blue collar, white collar, what will happen? Will it increase or decrease, shrink, grow? You can see that these are going to have effects on our economy in this region. To what degree are we going to be able to properly legislate for it, for example? I'll give you an example. Let's assume I have a bank here in the UAE, and somebody in country X has a nefarious plan for me using artificial intelligence, because if I was doing it myself, I'd be trying the route once, twice, 3 times. I'll be doing it all the time myself. But he or she using artificial intelligence can filter this nefarious method to get into my bank from different routes, different places. Let's assume he or she is successful in taking money out of it. So now the question is, legislatively, the theft happened here, but the person who's doing the thieving was in country X, which went through several countries, the routers, to get to me. Where did the theft actually happen? And what legislative government, what legislation, i.e. which country's legislation has the priority of holding them accountable? You can see where these things are going to multiply. How ready are we for these things? Everyone's saying we want to do this, we want to do this. Yeah, fantastic. But how ready are we getting towards this? So the question is, okay, from an operating perspective, it's harder and harder, yet the choices are plenty. So how you want to pull this, how much do you want to digitize? I don't know. Each company will take this as and when they think is right for them. From an investment perspective, if you're investing in anything other than technology, India, China, and by the way, technology could anything will fit in that. Either you know something I don't know about, or you don't like significant gains. And significant gains are only going to come because of the technological advances moving towards productivity. You remember the thing I was talking to before? But unfortunately, when you're a public listed company, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to create as much return on investment for the shareholder. So you don't care. So the productivity will become more and more and more. And we're using artificial intelligence. And if I can use quantum computing as well, I will be able to take it to even the highest degree of productivity. Once I do that, how does anyone doing the normal business compete with it? The answer is very hard. So if you wanted to invest, those are the areas I've been investing in. And I'm not suggesting anyone, I'm not going to suggest a company, I'm not going to suggest an idea. I'm just saying that these are the themes I would be into, because you can see that there's growth trajectory in those areas.
Great. Well, we're just slightly over time, so just one last question. So for any chair or board member out there, would you have any advice, or if you could speak to your younger self, if you could go back in time and you only had a couple minutes to give a quick advice to your younger self, what would that be?
Run away. Don't do this. There are people who just love the grandeur of being this or being that, but the responsibility is so enormous and so heavy. It's people's lives. It's not numbers, it's people's lives, and how much you want to affect that other person's life. So if I was advising myself, I would say, don't ever do this. Get away. Go do something else. Learn. By the way, that's something I want to focus on. I would love to focus on. I want more people focus on. Learn. Get an education. Keep on reading. Keep on listening. You don't want to read? There's audiobooks. You don't want to do audiobooks? There are documentaries. Learn. And don't stick just to one idea, because every idea has different inputs. I need to see all those inputs for me to form an idea, not take somebody else's idea and say, that's mine. No. This is why education is important. And until the day I die, if I am productive, my productivity should be in terms of helping spread knowledge and information and ideas, not bad knowledge, not bad ideas, not to harm people, but to say, okay, this is what I know. This is what I've experienced. This is basically what I'm doing right now with you. By the way, thank you, Shane. Because again, the idea is not, I do not want to say, I have everything, I'm fantastic, the world revolves around me. No, the world does not revolve around me. I don't want to be that place. I want people to come and say, okay, this is his bank of knowledge. Let me take from his bank of knowledge and utilize it as something else. And then some other person will say, I take from that bank of knowledge and do something else. One of the things that I have learned, and this is important, if you go back 3,000 years, 4,000 years, 10,000 years, whatever, however, in written history we have, how many buildings, edifices, monies, power, etc., have survived? And on the other side, how many books of knowledge have survived and are still today, even if there is this distortion, have today affected people's lives? And that's the important thing. It's knowledge. I would want to fight for knowledge. I would want to ensure that knowledge is open to everybody and everybody has a chance. This is important. Knowledge is important, and it's not something you sit there and hide, or you sit on it, or you stop people from getting it. Knowledge should be shared. It's this knowledge, shared knowledge, that made things happen, that makes empires great. It's those empires that sit on knowledge and don't share it that eventually collapse. But those that do share and do bring people on board and do help make the world better, those are the ones that keep on growing. Because who wants to destroy something that helps you versus you want to destroy something that sits on your chest?
Well, thank you so much. I think we could easily have done a couple of hours, and we don't have enough time. This special moment of actually getting a window into your approach to boards and the history, as you talked about the early days of Dubai, where it was only 300,000 people and everyone knew everyone, to now to the bustling city that it is. And you spoke of the importance of getting out of the family business where you were, quote unquote, not known or didn't have the kind of impact where your name was on the business. And how that kind of translates to your leadership style now, to understanding how these decisions affect people. And then you talked about the big cultural shifts that you did, taking over the business, going from autocratic style to more of an empowered style, and how you had to revamp the incentives and the bonuses, and the plus side of not having being able to make mistakes and to feel the commercial wind on your face. And then you talked about the importance of not having profits for profit's sakes, but the loyalty of the people, the commitment to your community, to your society. And I liked how you said, okay, now corporations are talking about ESG, but that's been a hallmark and a touchstone of the family business from its inception. And then you talked about how important it is for us as board members to use the informal channels of communication and build those relationships, and sometimes how it's much better to keep those informal channels open so that your boardroom can work effectively, and the dynamic between the board members can work. And then you talked about the future and what it looks like, and how you have local actors who are creating global impact from international locations, and how this creates unusual risks, but also opportunities, and how it's difficult to imagine how this will play out, and that the AI revolution hasn't really started yet, and having an AI chatbot on your website doesn't count. So see what happens next. So thank you so much. It was really awesome listening to you, and thank you so much for your time, Mr. Mishal Kanoo.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the, I hope, by the way, the only thing I do hope from this is people have benefited from it. And if there's more I can do, I'd be much more, I'm more than happy to, because at the end of the day, it's knowledge transfer. It's just knowledge transfer. What can I do with this knowledge when I die? Zero, right? So it's knowledge transfer. The more knowledge I can transfer to others to give them a chance to do better. Maybe what I'm saying doesn't affect them, or doesn't appeal to them. It's fine, but I want people to have the option to hear, because what we do, especially in this part of the world, and I hate it, we just talk about our successes, we just talk about how wonderful we are, and how the world revolves around us. And that's never worked. I don't know anyone who does that. I want people to see, I don't want to be just negative about things, but I want people to understand we work sometimes, it happens sometimes, it doesn't work sometimes. And what are the options so that people feel, you know what, I think it, but nobody says it. Maybe I'm wrong. No. By hearing it, sometimes you say, oh, okay, so maybe I'm not wrong. Somebody else thinks it's right. So maybe what I'm saying is correct. So we need to give people the option to think everything is not necessarily always rosy. And not everything is great. Things go wrong, things happen, and we must be brave enough to say, you know what? I'm open to say I make mistakes because I do make mistakes. And anyone who says he doesn't make mistakes, well, there's a few words I could choose for that person, but I won't say it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mishal Kanoo. So great listening to you. Please give him a round of applause. And if you would like to stay on and listen to, I'm sure you have a lot of things to do, but one of the big anticipated speakers, as well as yourself, is Mr. Dr. Nasser Saidi, who's coming up, and the rest of our really established panel on the role of the boards, the board's role in driving profitability, which will start now. And thanks again. And for anyone who missed the talk from Mr. Mishal, we'll have the recording will be released. And Mr. Mishal, I'll make sure that you also get a copy of the recording of this session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I wish you the best. And by the way, Dr. Nasser is a brilliant mind. People really need to hear him. I'm not blowing wind up the proverbial backside. No. He's a brilliant mind. Really need to hear what he has to say. He's an economist. He understands how things work. Please pay attention to him.
Yep. Thank you so. Thanks so.
Mishal. It was good listening to you. Great to reconnect if it's only online, but thanks to Shane.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. So with no further ado, let me please introduce Dr. Nasser Saidi, who's president of Dr. Saidi and Associates. And for most of us, he's one of the living legends in the region. Dr. Nasser was the Minister of Economy and Trade and Minister of Industry of Lebanon between 1998 and 2000. He was the first Vice Governor of the Central Bank of Lebanon. Dr. Saidi is a chairman of the Regional Clean Energy Business Council, and he's also been named among the 50 most influential Arabs in the world as one of the 500 most powerful Arabs in the world by Arabian Business. He is the chairman of the Saif Ghurair Group. He's a board member of National Bank of Kuwait. He's a board member of Berry Tech. He's the chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee of Majid Al Futtaim Trust, and he holds other board positions as well. Dr. Saidi holds a PhD and a master's in economics from the University of Rochester in the United States of America, a master's from University College London University, and a bachelor's from the American University of Beirut. Please welcome Dr. Nasser Saidi.
Thank you, Shane, for organizing this. And now you know why I've earned my silver hair.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I've had the pleasure of knowing you for many years, and it's a really honor to have you with us. And we have a really esteemed panel with us today. Also from Saudi Arabia, we have the founder and chairwoman, CEO founder and chairwoman of CS Consulting, Dr. Dina AlNahdy, and Dr. Dina Hasan AlNahdy is a leading figure in sustainability and the circular economy. With over 25 years of experience, she has a master's in environmental management and an honorary doctorate. She founded and chairs CES Consulting and specializes in helping her clients from strategy to implementation, aligning with Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia on SDGs and ESG frameworks. Dr. Dina AlNahdy currently serves as Vice Chair of UN Global Compact KSA, and she's also on Alima Bank's Sustainability Committee. She's an alumni of INSEAD and ISADE Business Schools, and she's also a Miss 2030 leader and Saudi Leaders Majlis member. She also, one of my childhood dreams she has achieved. She's also a Guinness world record holder for the largest hand-printed environmentally friendly canvas in the world. Maybe she can give us more light on that, but she used that to spread environmental awareness to over 1.2 million people. So please welcome Dr. Dina AlNahdy.
Well, thank you, Sheikh, for that introduction. And it's wonderful to be here in the room with Mr. Nasser, Saidi. It's an honor. And I look forward to sharing knowledge, as Mr. Mishal has mentioned. And we'll hear the others.
And and then our next panelist is also kind of one of the legends in the M&A space. She has done over, she founded her own M&A firm. This is the executive chairwoman of PJT deNovo, Mrs. May Nasrallah. Mrs. May Nasrallah founded deNovo Partners in 2010, leading it to become a top boutique advisory firm in the Middle East, advising over 100 transactions, including two of the region's largest private sector M&A deals in 2024. And as of October 2024, she has integrated the business into PJT Partners and continues as the executive chair of PJT deNovo. Previously, she spent 15 years at Morgan Stanley, and she holds 3 degrees from MIT, including a master's in finance. Please welcome Mrs. May Nasrallah.
Thank you very much, Shane. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and not to mention my esteemed fellow panelists.
Thank you for coming. It's quite an intimidating background. And as I was saying before, there's not many people who even survive starting their own M&A firm, but you have really outperformed pretty much most of the big firms in town. And it was really an honor to have you here on the panel. And our next panelist, Ms. Alison Rehill-Erguven, is Chief Executive Officer with Cenomi Centers. And Alison boasts over 25 years of international experience in the shopping mall and real estate industry, spanning Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and Latin America. She has successfully managed companies, joint ventures, globally prominent assets, establishing herself as a leader in developed and emerging markets. Before joining Cenomi in 2022, she served as CEO of Ghurair Retail Asia, which was acquired by Brookfield, a Canadian company, and managing director at Ghurair Limited. Rehill-Erguven holds an MSc in organizational leadership and a BSc in international trade and marketing. She also serves as a non-executive board member of ESAS Greymenco. So welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. Nice to have you.
Pleasure to be here, and pleasure to meet all of you as well.
Great. So we have everything covered from FMCG, retail, finance, ESG, sustainability, and of course, Dr. Nasser has volunteered to give us an insight of what kind of what should we be looking at as we look out to this year and beyond, with all the different disruptions. And of course, we have some new geopolitical figures who are raising a few eyebrows. So I'll hand it over to the master, and we're all eager to hear what your perspective is, Dr. Nasser Saidi.
Thank you, Cheng. You're right to point to the fact that this is a very unusual period. It's a period of both global fragmentation, but also a lot of transformation, which is taking place, particularly in our part of the world. So those two aspects should retain our attention and should retain the attention of any board. If you look at our region, it is poised between what's happening in Asia and Africa, Europe, and the United States on the other side. And we're living a period of what's now economists call Maganomics. You have a Trump administration that is proposing to undo a lot of international order, but it's not the only one. We need to remember that in 2024, some 74 countries had national elections. So you also have new policies being introduced by many of those governments. And if you look at an indicator of global economic policy uncertainty, it is now peaking. So we've entered into a period where we don't know where economic policies will be going. It's not just tariffs and trade, Trump tariffs and trade. it is a wider set. The first part, I think, which we care about in our part of the world, is the fact that if there are tariffs in trade, they're likely to hit aluminum and steel, which we are producers of and exporters of to the rest of the world, including the United States. So what you're having is a potential change in trade patterns. And this could disrupt supply chains. So many of our businesses are looking at your supply chains, and management of your supply chains is going to be a forced order of the day. A related point, of course, is that the boards should now look at geopolitics. Geopolitics has got to be on the agenda, in my view, of every board meeting. You cannot move away from it. It has to be there. Previously, in previous years, we didn't care about it. This time around, we do have to care about it. The other element, I think, which is important, is that regional dynamics are changing. So not only have we had a shift in global economic geography, and particularly important for us, global economic geography has shifted eastward. And if we look at our main trade partner, it is now Asia and in particular China. So that's a big one for us. And increasingly, what we need to care about is what's happening in Asia and particularly China, and how tariffs might affect China and how China will retaliate. So that's one element. The second element, I think, at the regional level is the changing regional politics and the landscape. We've had the demise of what's called the axis of resistance. You have a new regime now in Syria, changes in Gaza and Palestine, a new government in Lebanon. All of that is changing. And as a result of that, one question which comes up is there potential coming out of the new regional dynamics in terms of reconstruction and redevelopment of many countries that got destroyed through war and violence? I estimate that the potential reconstruction could run up to $2.2 trillion. That is massive. But we don't know whether that's going to happen and whether regional politics and global politics will actually allow that. But I'll put that on the agenda. The other two elements I think that we need to worry about is this is also a period of rapid technological change. AI, blockchain, automation, robotics, those has implications for all our businesses. And you heard Mishal talk about some of them. But these are real. And part of them affect the way you work internally in a company and how it affects your processes and businesses and production, but also the way you deal with your suppliers and stakeholders. So all of that is unraveling. Look at what happened with DeepSeek. DeepSeek nearly wiped out $1 trillion worth of market capitalization in the United States, but also led to greater interest in China tech. In my view, China is very well advanced, if not ahead of the US in terms of things like AI, blockchain, as well as quantum computing. So put that again on your agenda. The fourth item, I think, which is critical for us in the region, is the issue of the energy transition and climate change. We already lived it in the past few years, but increasingly this is an item that should be on the board's agenda. So far, the way we've dealt with it is we've waved the flag of ESG, and many of us sort of, where are we ranking on ESG and the indicators? We bring in consultants and all the rest. I think we've gone beyond that. It is no longer about ESG. To me, it's about CSG, climate, social, and governance. Why climate? Because climate risk mitigation should be on our agenda. Climate risk adaptation needs to be on our agenda. And that means that you need to review your business continuity plans and your business recovery plans. And you need to look at the sustainability of your operations. if it rains or there are high winds or high temperatures, the tarmac on your roads can start melting. Your buildings cannot sustain the water. I've seen buildings across the region where when you have heavy rain, it starts dripping inside the building, right? So how do you adapt your infrastructure? You need to retrofit your infrastructure. You need to retrofit your factories, your buildings, and all the rest. So these four elements, global, regional, technology, climate change, and the energy transition, are all very important. And if you just look for a minute at the energy transition, if it is true that you'll have increased oil and gas supplies, then this could have an implication on the oil price. Okay? So apart from any disruption in trade patterns and supply, you could have lower oil prices. Lower oil prices for many of the countries in the region means lower government revenue. That means fiscal pro-cyclicality instead of counter-cyclicality. So it increases macroeconomic risks. So let me just end with that idea that our boards now are facing a very different set of risks than the usual set of risks they've always looked at as businesses, right? You've got May, you've got Dina, you've got Alison. All of them are, and by the way, thank you for Jane for adjusting gender into gender imbalance. I think a good thing. So if you look at our businesses, they're used to dealing with the business risks. Now, I think you're looking at policy risks, which are much more important, things that are not necessarily under your control, but to which you need to adapt. So review your board agendas, what's going to be on there. Think about the composition of your board. You have board members who are adapted and will help your businesses adapt to the new risks and changes. You have board committees. I'm not saying that every company should have an AI or tech committee, board tech committee, but you might want to give it a thought. You want a CTO, you want a CIO, etc. All of those questions rear themselves. So this is a time of challenges, but I just want to end with one item where I want to be extremely positive. Because of the energy transition, and because in particular the GCC countries are now at the forefront in terms of investing in renewable energy and climate tech, we are in a position in the GCC in particular to be global hubs, both for fossil fuel energy and for renewable energy and climate tech. And the other major idea is that if the US, EU, and others want to de-risk from China, we are in the middle. We don't need to take sides. We have good relations with all. And I'll leave you with the idea that we could emerge as middle powers, emerging as middle powers. We already have the soft power. People have tested us through expos, through all sorts of international events. We now play arbiter in international relations. The US and Russia met in Saudi Arabia. All of this is changing the picture. So ending on a strong note of optimism, we can emerge as middle powers in this changing world.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Nasser Saidi. Yeah, I never thought of being a middle power, but it sounds like the right strategy. And I mean, as you're saying, we can see that with the recent U.S. and Russia meeting in Saudi. I guess that's kind of a litmus test of where we're heading in the region. I don't know if any of the panelists here have you started to make changes in light of some of these trends now. I mean, we haven't seen. Should we maybe have a Chinese board member? We haven't, as a search firm, gotten that request. Maybe that I'll have to give you shares in the company. Maybe that will be our big growth lever as we head out. May, you're smiling. I guess you must in the finance world, obviously feeling the heat of some of these Chinese players who have various tailwinds as they head into the region.
I wouldn't say that I'm feeling the heat. I'm actually feeling the opportunities that come with it. And it's always a tough act to follow Dr. Nasser, but I'll try my best to give some perspectives from what I'm seeing from a practitioner standpoint, because everything that Dr. Nasser said is exactly right on. I've been now in the region for a better part of 19 years, working predominantly in M&A, in investment banking, transitioning from a global firm, Morgan Stanley, to my own outfit, and then now back into a global firm in PGT Partners. And what I've seen, I don't think I could have ever predicted what I'm seeing today, which is, as it stands, given everything that's going on in the world, given the whole seismic shifts and dynamic changes that are happening in the US, in Europe, China, within Europe, Ukraine, Russia, within sort of the border sets of the Middle East, what's happening, we're seeing that the GCC specifically is emerging as the middle power that Dr. Nasser is referring to, but also a hub for attractiveness of investments. So we've never seen as much global strategic companies looking to buy companies over here. We've never seen as much international private equity companies looking to actually put boots on the ground and invest in buying stakes in companies here. And we've never seen as many Chinese delegations, literally on a weekly basis, coming in quantums, looking at where they could think about investing, where they can think about putting boots on the ground, what they should be doing, and how they should capitalize on opportunities over here. And equally, we're seeing a better part of European groups saying, okay, well, look, we are facing headwinds in our own markets. Where do we look at growth? Okay, we can't quite grow into China the way that we would have necessarily historically because of the whole elements between US and China. Let's look at where around the world are there clear, dollarized economies that are, relatively speaking, stable, with leadership that we can work with, or with an ecosystem environment that we can work with, and they look towards our region. So we're seeing a lot of activity as a result of all of that. And I think one can't sit in a boardroom today and not be very attuned to all of these factors put together, including where do you get alpha, where do you get outsized returns, where do you look at growth opportunities, and where can you invest time and effort and resources to capitalize on all of these things that are going on. Clearly, you cannot dispel what's happening in AI. Clearly, you can't dispel all the movements in the environment and in climate and what have you. But you certainly need to look at regions where you have a growing population, a population that's increasing its spending power, that is able to then, which is also, frankly, a young population. If you look at our region, it's predominantly a young population. In Saudi alone, you've got 70% of the population below the age of 30 and about 90% of it below the age of 40. So you look at dynamics in this region and you find that there's a lot of potential to look at really interesting growth dynamics and really interesting types of companies that are new economy companies that could come and actually capitalize on everything that we're doing. So I'm seeing it as a point of conversation in my clients' boards, in my clients' senior management, and certainly in the dynamics of everything that I'm doing in boards that I sit on as well, in terms of topics of discussions and opportunities for one to look at. And I would say that our region here in the GCC specifically likes to never miss an opportunity to capitalize on any dynamics that's going on elsewhere in the world. And we're seeing the results of that today. Maybe I'll pause here and let maybe my colleagues had something more to add.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Dr. Dina AlNahdy, you must be seeing a huge push on the sustainability as well. I mean, it's you must feel the changes dramatically being in Saudi itself, where even physically the landscape has changed. When you land in Jeddah now, it's like being at SeaWorld. The first thing is the world's biggest aquarium, and the shift has been so huge. What are you seeing from your perspective?
Yeah, well, first of all, yes, it is a breath of fresh air to hear Mr. Mishal Kanoo and Dr. Nasser to highlight and to mention this. And why I'm saying that is because being on many different boards and knowing that this is a very important global and national, when I say national, I mean in Saudi Arabia, it's on the agenda because obviously making sure that businesses, whether they are corporates, whether they are banks, whether they are even on city levels and on country levels, making sure that it's sustainable has become a realization. But unfortunately, it's not seeping through to all levels and to all sectors until now. So the fact is, I've sat on boards where I struggled to actually share this knowledge and to explain what does it mean to make this business sustainable? What does it mean on a strategic level, and how to trickle that through into the implementation of it through the executive team. The knowledge, and I'll again point back to what Mr. Kanoo said, sharing knowledge and learning is crucial at this time. Because yes, it's as again, Dr. Nasser, I'm going to have to go back to what they've been saying and pointing it out. He's rightly said how it is today, not even the ESG, but it's the CSG, because climate change, obviously the environmental aspect plays a role in the CSG. So that's a larger way to look at it. There's also the circular economy, and circular economy is also how we can look at the new business methodologies and how to make sure that we're advancing responsibly. So again, as he rightly said, we're looking at energy, all the energy transition and clean energy, green energy, but then there's also the fuel energy, the fossil energy, which is we're not getting rid of it. It's there. And it needs to be there. It's just how can we make sure that this is done responsibly? We're making sure that it's the least negative impact. Now, when I say negative impact, it's not just about the environment, because that's where the ROI comes in, right? And this is where I think it is crucial. And I thank you for this opportunity, because boards do need to realize it's not a tick on the box. It's not a checklist of, okay, done that, got that over, and let's have this what's it called, like a trophy or a badge, okay, to say, oh, we have that ticked off. No, it's in the DNA of a business. It's in the DNA of banks. It's in the DNA of, it's part of making sure that this business is sustainable. So that is very important. Awareness, training, learning, understanding fully, believing it, incorporating it in the strategies on a board level, and then making sure that it trickles down to the implementation of it. Because another thing, again, been on boards where they believe in it, it's in the strategy, but then there's no real follow-up on the implementation. So again, then it becomes pointless. So it is, in my opinion, it is the role also of the board to ensure that there are implementations of all that's been mentioned. I mean, the sustainability is part of it, but then all the rest, it's very important that the boards play a role in ensuring, following, checking the KPIs, putting very clear KPIs to be able to measure the implementation of what the executive teams are doing.
Well, yeah, I just wonder if, as Dr. Nasser's pointing out, I was with the CEO of Masdar City, and they're doing the world's largest solar power plant there, and on a lot of these points, whether it's on the renewables or maybe it's on the sustainable side as well, we shift to actually becoming leaders in a hub for all of these very important plot lines, but. I'm interested to hear what Alison has to say, of course, representing kind of, in my opinion, part of heart and soul of the Middle East. As nobody loves our shopping malls and our retail and our FMCG more than the Middle East. And, I think it's one of the few places in the world you can go to a mall at midnight on a Tuesday and still have to wait in line to get up the escalator because it's just packed. So,
Yes.
Alison, what are you seeing from your side, and what's the drumbeat of the retail sector on these points?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to underscore one point on China. I literally have a hard stop at 4 o'clock because JP Morgan has organized an entire Chinese contingency to meet us at the Mandarin Oriental. So you could not prove the point, more. And it's at least 15 to 20 companies. It's extraordinary. So forgive me if I have to bounce at 4 o'clock. So that was the first point I wanted to make. Secondly, I just last point on China. I spent 5 years in China, in Shanghai specifically, running that joint venture and really understanding the Chinese culture and the dynamics there. It was from about 2016 when we set up the JV to 2022 when I came actually to Saudi. It was an extraordinary time to be in China. I almost felt like I learned my business over again through the eyes of how the Chinese were approaching it. And I see a lot of similarities in the Chinese culture to the Saudi Arabian culture. People look at me sideways when I say that, but they are incredibly dynamic. They're conservative, but they have a huge youth population. They're very technologically savvy. They're nationalistic, but in a very, like a nice, healthy balance. It's really, the synergies are really interesting. And so I'm not surprised that you'll see probably even more and more Chinese/Asian countries coming this way to do more business. And I would highly recommend it. I am American. That's all I have to say at this point. I'm not going to take a political stance.
We understand
Yeah.
you, Alison.
Thank you. I would like to apologize, but anyway, that's a different point.
I might be
More
American
likely
too by the end of the
sympathize.
week. I may have an American passport by the end of the week. Let's see
Shane,
how it goes.
I can't even. Anyway, on sustainability. So I completely would underscore everything that Dr. Dina just said. We are actually trying to walk the walk and be a leader here in the shopping center space. We're the largest owner and operator of shopping centers in the kingdom. So we should also be leading with that. And we have signed our first PPA with a Japanese company, actually, a Japanese JV. We did that in the end of 23. We launched the sustainability ideas in the beginning of 23, and we were making good on it by the end of 23. And that was also a board decision. I had to take the board on the journey of why it's important. Because prior to that, even though it aligns with Vision 2030, nobody had the urgency to necessarily, or just, the forward thinking to do something about it. So we put some ideas and some plans together, got them to approve it, and then it's all about the execution. So I sit in this space of management reporting into board in my current role, but I also sit as an NED on another real estate company in Turkey, who's also been a leader in sustainability. And the reason why it's so important is FDI is coming. International investors really care about your ESG platform. They care about what you're doing for the environment. Sometimes they can't even invest with you or to you or in you unless you have a proper ESG platform and you're not just greenwashing. So I do understand how important it is. It is a journey that you need to take the board on. And then as management, you need to execute on it as well. So that's my thoughts on that. In terms of Saudi, look, 2024 was a relatively decent year in terms of retail sales. The GCC, Saudi Arabia, I think, makes up 50% of all retail sales in the GCC. Vision 2030, shifting the economy from non-oil, 25% of that should be coming from the retail sector. So my business is set up very well to align with the transformation that's happening in Saudi Arabia today. I do believe 2025 will be a better year than 24. I felt more optimistic about that probably about a month ago, only because of the geopolitical dynamics that are in place. Saudi Arabia taking a step forward and trying to be a middle power. I love that, with the United States and with Russia. But the world stage is watching. Ukraine was left out. I don't want to get into politics on this call, but there are sticky points in being a middle power that I think everyone's going to have to manage through very delicately. But I am cautiously optimistic in terms of the GDP growth in Saudi in 2025. And yeah.
Wow, so very interesting points there. May, I don't know, will we get a better multiple on our exit if we're selling our company? Maybe if we're dealing with you on the deal, I'm sure you'll tear us to shreds. But would we get a better multiple if we have that strong ESG and sustainability program there?
Look, I think ESG is an important factor in everything, right? I appreciate that maybe Washington, D.C. might feel differently today, but it doesn't mean that the U.S. feels differently about that in totality. But ESG is an important piece of the puzzle because in the longer run, it will always create further value. I spent a couple of years as a non-executive chair for BlackRock for the region, and their whole narrative around ESG and focus around that was a very big influencer in people then taking this topic seriously. When the largest single investor saying this matters, people pay attention. But I do think that it needs to dovetail between the private sector saying that this is an initiative that they're willing to embrace because it is important, but also government and nationals sort of looking at this as an important piece of the puzzle in terms of any of the benefits that they could provide companies that are taking this seriously. Now, vis-a-vis valuations, look, fundamentally, again, I do believe the greater action in the greater scheme of things for looking at the longer term. So if you're doing things that are harmful, I think it'll catch up to you. But also, if you want to maximize the number of investors that could look at you as a company, exactly the point that Alison was making earlier, US investors, European investors, Western investors in general, do care about this topic. So they do ask it, and it does become a factored feature in the discussions that we have with them when they ask that question. And we have had a situation of something that I had been working on in the past, where one bidder decided not to pursue an opportunity that otherwise looked beautiful in terms of filling in a gap that they have in their own sort of global landscaping, because they felt that the company did not take the topic. Not just that they didn't take it seriously, but they actually had went counter to it. So it does have an impact, and I think we all have a bit of a social responsibility, but also an economic responsibility to make sure that these issues are addressed head on.
Shane,
Great.
can I just jump in at this stage?
Please.
Because there's something that the rest of the world doesn't know about us. We talked about solar power. And right now, the solar power we're investing in is going to cost us less than 1 cent per kilowatt. Now, what does that mean? For Alison, it means greater efficiency in terms of retail across the board. It means being able to go into electric vehicles. But even more important, what we're seeing right now is data centers. We can be, again, I don't want to exaggerate, we can be the global hub for AI data centers, which are green. That is, they are powered by solar energy. Nobody else can do that. Texas might have thought about it, but you can forget it under the Republicans, right? I mean, so here what we're talking about is data centers which can guide everything you want to do on automation, etc. In addition to that, we can be leaders in climate tech and things like desalination, district cooling, desert agriculture, etc. We've tried and tested those technologies which nobody else has. We have 50% or more of the world's desalination capacity in our region, and we've been doing it for 40 years, and now we're doing it using solar power. So I think I now call the GCC economies the Falcon economies, right? Just a little bit like the tiger economies we had in the past. So again, you know, we're on a rising path. The only thing I worry about is whether we get diverted from that path because of the geopolitics. I rest my case.
I can come. Yeah. Well, we are all fully aware of the geopolitics here. Is there any closing remarks? I think Dr. Dina has something for us here.
I'd like to tap on what Dr. Nasser just said and what he said previously when it comes to policy risks. You know, as Saudi today is leading in so many aspects, but they're also very agile. And this is a beautiful, refreshing thing because this agility is allowing actually for policies to be adjusted, for rules and regulations to be adjusted. And when there are entities, whether they are government or private sector, locally and internationally, okay, having an actual strong technological, sound and sustainable solutions then we have been working on lobbying to a positive lobby, obviously, but towards adjusting these rules and regulations, and that has actually, many of them have actually been implemented already, whether it's in logistics, whether it's in the tariffs, whether it's in industry and mining. So these are different sectors where we were able to work on or have the rules and regulations and policies adjusted to the benefit of the country, of the businesses as well. So it is a win-win situation. That's what sustainability is all about. It should be PPP, so it's the public-private participation, and making sure that this happens. As he said correctly, there are policy risks, but then we are agile enough. And I say this proudly, we are agile enough. I'm in the chamber. I was previously on the board of Chamber of Commerce Jeddah. I'm currently in the United Chambers of the Kingdom. Almost daily, there are surveys going out to private sector, asking about certain rules and regulations. And they actually, this feedback is not taken lightly, and things are being adjusted. So that is a very important part. Yes, the global scene and the political scene obviously plays a big role, but then you know how I'm going to speak as Mr. Mishal spoke, with very simple examples. At the end of the day, you have your own home, you're running your home, and you want to run it in the best, most efficient, sustainable, comfortable for yourself, your family, and anybody that's coming into your home, irrelevant if what's your neighbors are not happy about that, or the next neighborhood altogether is complaining. I will be courteous to an extent, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're running your home in the best way. So that being said, yes, all political situations are important and need to be looked at and studied but I don't see that shifting or deriving away from, the vision,
Sure.
from the targets, the way we need business to make sure. When I say business, I mean, even the country today is run as a business. And I love that. It's great. We're all actually seeing that difference. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I mean, I've done a lot of panels, and really, this is my favorite one. I have did experts from different areas and different geographies, and so some of us have to get running to our Chinese delegations, and of course we're a little bit over time, and I know everybody's super busy, so I just want to be respectful of your time. And I know it's very rare for some of you actually to make an appearance, so we really appreciate it. And couldn't thank you enough for being here on this panel. I think I'm going to go hire a Chinese consultant to join our team right away. If anyone knows a good one, please let me know. So thank you so much, and let's have a big round of applause for our panel. That you
Thank
can
you,
interfere.
Shane.
Yep.
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone. Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nasser. Thank you, May. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Dr. Dina. So now it's with a real pleasure to introduce one of the legends, another legend. We have so many legends today, and here, one of the big legends of Dubai. I think you really cannot go anywhere without being exposed to his brands. And so please allow me to introduce our main speaker, Mr. Patrick Chalhoub, the executive chairman of Chalhoub Group. Chalhoub is a creator of luxury experiences in the Middle East with over 16,000 professionals across 8 countries. The group boasts 10 owned brands and represents over 950 international brands in luxury, beauty, fashion, and art de vivre. Mr. Chalhoub has received prestigious awards, including the French Chevalier de l'Ordre National du Mérite, Chevalier de l'Ordre National de les Légions d'Honneur, and the Lebanese National Order of the Cedar. Great officer. He serves on the boards of the UN Global Compact, the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the UAE Circular Economy. Patrick, sorry, I'm bastardizing your language, but we just wanted to welcome you, and it's a real pleasure. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Shana. And just too many titles doesn't mean anything. It's whom you are and what you want to achieve.
Yes, it's a big inspiration. Always looking at, looking back at your evolution, and it started with just one shop, and so many times we start something, and you don't realize all these great companies, these massive, iconic businesses like the one you run, and others across our region started with that one entrepreneur, that first customer, that first sale, that first shop. And the other thing that was really interesting is how you have turned adversity into opportunity. And maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Sure, Sean. So first, I wasn't the founder of the Chalhoub Group. It was my parents, my father and mother, who started in Damascus, Syria. And they have this unwavering love of France, a passion which really they wanted to be a kind of ambassador of the language of Molière, and to introduce French way of lifestyle in Syria and into the Middle East. So in 1955, their dream have materialized by opening one small tiny store of 30 square meter for a silverware brand called Christophe, and in the main street of Damascus. And again, gradually they moved out of Syria and they started expanding to the Gulf country. But speaking about adversity, the political and economical situation in Syria didn't help them to be regional. So they decided in 1963, I was only 5 years old at that time, to move to Lebanon, where it was a more welcoming economy in order to be able to use it as a platform. But and they have started at that time into the 50s and the 60s to try to visit all those countries of the Gulf. And at that time, their customers were mainly rulers, presidents, wealthy families. And then in 1975, with the civil war of Lebanon, they have decided to move to one of the subsidiaries which was established in Kuwait. I only joined the business in 1979 in Kuwait. I have continued my studies after Lebanon in France, and took my bachelor in France, and then went to the US for 1 year into an internship in a marketing position, and then joined the family business in 1979. And when I started, I would say, in a group which we were hundreds or few hundreds of people within the group, and we were mainly ambassador of brands, so representative of brands on the Middle East region. I would say since I joined the business, what we have tried to do in an intelligent manner was to put some more professionalism in a very, I would say, limited family business, and to move and to transition our role from being an ambassador or a representative of brands to become a distributor into the 90s, to become a retail in the 20s, and to be an omnichannel retail organization in the 2015 and onwards. And we moved gradually from few hundreds to few thousand, and today we are 16,000 people within the group and within the organization. And again, within my role, I moved from being, I would say, in charge of a brand, then in charge of the perfume division, in charge of business outside Kuwait, which was our base, to gradually become a co-CEO in 91, and deputy CEO in 91, co-CEO in 2001, and when my brother passed away, I took over in 2017 as CEO and group president. I would say it has been a fantastic journey, a journey where we had to transform every time. In 1990, at the time of the Iraqi invasion in Kuwait, we had with my brother to take the courageous decision for the third time to move our headquarters and to move it in Kuwait. In fact, we had planned this movement in '89, and the Kuwaiti invasion have just accelerated our movement to to Dubai and to the UAE, which has been since then a fantastic platform in order to create a hub which covers the Gulf countries and beyond the Gulf countries, and which have helped this transformation about it. I would add, because it is the subject of the day, all our movement from being a family business run by a family and within the circle of the family to create more professionalism. So in the 90s, after we transferred to Kuwait and I took a more leading role, we have put in place a board with three outside, an advisory board in the beginning with three outside members of the advisory board, and we have been able to professionalize gradually our business. And in 2005, when I became co-CEO, we have moved to another level of sophistication, having a full-fledged board with 4 non-executive, non-family members, a very challenging team of outside members along with the family members who have helped us to be able to evolve, transform, and become a much more professionally led organization. And I have been blessed during all those years to be able to have around me talented people whom we have tried to attract, to retain, to develop, and continue during all those years a very strong focus on learning, on enhancing curiosity of our teams, and on developing our teams in order to ensure that we have an organization which was quite professionally run. We also moved and transformed our model of being distributor and franchisee to become partner of brand. We felt it was much better to be sitting on the same side of the table and to really work in order to inspire, accelerate, and delight our customer, rather than to be on 2 sides of the table and focusing our attention on how we could better focus on our business. And I would say very recently, so in January, and willingly, I decided to step out of my role of CEO. My son, Michael, have taken over the role of CEO, and I have transitioned to be in the role of executive chairman. So I am experiencing another phase of the development of the organization, but which also helped to verify that the structure is solid enough in order to allow this kind of transition in an orderly way and avoid some of the challenges which could be met and making sure that we remain innovative, looking forward, but at the same time, very anchored in our values and very respectful to everything which has been done up till now.
Wow, that's amazing. And one of the things my friend, he always said, you're never going to make it in business because you're not mean enough. But then when I'm talking to Mishal, Kanoo, and now listening to yourself and having visited you, I mean, you guys have such big hearts and you care about your people and your communities so much. Has that been kind of one of the hallmarks of your success is really the way, because when you walk the halls of your office, you can see that people really love working for you. Is that been part of the strategy, or was that just a natural byproduct of being a family business?
I would say it's part of our culture, really a culture of making sure, as I said, to try to attract talent, to empower them, to attract younger generation who want to be impactful much faster, to really empower them, attract them, and also giving all the ability for them to strive into their business. And if we can make our teams, our employee, whom I consider more colleagues than employee, whom I consider stakeholder into the organization, and make sure that we align our incentive, they will be the best way to enable us to service well our customer and to succeed in our business. So we try to be very much people-centric. Also, we have, in Dubai, there is about 195 nationality. In our group, we have only 125 nationality. So inclusion, diversity has always been part of it. be it gender diversity, be it nationality diversity, having people who have been with us since 40 years or more, or very young colleagues who just join and integrating with them well, being people of determination whom we are really happy to have been able to attract, and we are very happy of their performances, because where they are good, they are really very good, and we have been able to integrate it. So really this philosophy of focusing on our people, being very inclusive in the way we do, creating a collaborative mindset, creating a great place to work, not only to tick a box, but really to have a pleasant atmosphere, a balanced life, and making sure that the teams is passionate about what they do and motivated to succeed in their best ability. So yes, focus on people as much as we have really our customer at heart. We really feel that our customer, we are absolutely here to make sure that we not only service them, pamper them, offer them experiences, but really engage with them and consider them in a way, or they consider us as their partner, very loyal to them. Not only we want them to be loyal to us, but we want to be very loyal to our customer. So we tried during all those years to create a group which is really focused on its people and on its customers.
Well, and so maybe you can talk a little bit about how you kind of structure your communication meetings, relationships with the board, with the CEO. What kind of committees, subcommittees do you like to have? What kind of interaction do you like to have? Do you think a chairman should have with a CEO, etc.?
Sure. So first, speaking about the board, as I said, we transitioned from a board which were an advisory board, and where we had, I would say, 3 members very close to the family, to a board which is, I would say, professionally recruited, with outside member whom we didn't know, but obviously we have headhunted them, and they are extremely knowledgeable and expert into their own part of it. And we have created a structure which meets, I would say, at least 4 times a year, every quarter, meets 4 times a year to make sure that they are able to assess, verify, validate some of the decisions which are taken by the CEO and by the executive committee, and which really focus on the long-term strategy of the organization and of the group. We really, the board is leaving the day-to-day operation, the yearly budget in the hand of the executive committee and the operational team in order to be able to run it. Obviously, validating the budget and discussing about the budget. And we have put in place 3 subcommittees, 3+1, because we integrated the 4th one with the 3 first. So one which will be a financial and an audit committee, which also meet 4 times a year apart the advisory board. One which is taking care of all the strategy and the investment, and which again meet 4 times a year in addition to the meetings of the board. And the 3rd one, which is more about people and culture. And we added to people and culture our drive of ESG, which is a different chapter, but we have included them together, because we are only 8 board members into doing it. And I would say what I love into the board, and also with the outside members, they are extremely motivated, interested. We just made a trip to Saudi Arabia for 4 days, where they have met not only our executive committee, but more our leadership team in Saudi Arabia, in order to ask questions, to understand better, and when they have to give their opinion or their advice on certain decision or their decision, to make sure that they have a more in-depth knowledge about what is happening. So very curious, and pushing our executive team, pushing me when I was at the same time the CEO and the president of the group, and now my son Michael, to go over and beyond our capabilities, and making sure that we say what we do what we say, and supporting us very efficiently.
Well, I guess your board members might have one advantage though, because I believe, given the luxury segment you're in, they could also be your target customer potentially, right, for a lot of the brands that you have.
Yeah, I mean, we have quite a number of targeted customer. Obviously, some of the high net worth individuals, but not only. We want to be very aspirational. We want to who stop dreaming, who stop wanting to evolve, to have a better life, and somehow get access to luxury, and not luxury to show his luxury. We have always developed this notion that we have to appreciate luxury for the qualities of what luxury can offer, for the quality of the product, for the work which is being done in it, for its aesthetic and its innovative part of it. So really, the love of luxury for ourselves and what we aspire and get us inspired to do. And because for a long time in our part of the world, luxury was more which is happen often when you have a new generation of wealthy people who come to the market. They want to show and demonstrate that they have access to the wealth, and they show it through the luxury product they use. We always have really developed this intrinsic love of luxury for the quality of the luxury and for what it could offer to our consumer. So not only to our board members, but to, I would say, to everyone, even if they cannot access it, but really to try to create this inspiration, aspiration, and make it a real pleasure to acquire. And also sustainable, because often luxury is quite criticized, or the consumption in general, but including luxury. But usually luxury, because of the quality, is much more durable than any fast-moving consumer goods, and could last much longer, and sometimes transmitted from generation to generation, and be much more keeping in mind all the environment, climate change, and all the elements which you have spoken about a little bit earlier. And really, as a group, we have been extremely engaged into the drive which has happened. And like Dr. Dina is part of the UNGC, I'm part also of the UNGC. We signed since 2017 our addition to the UNGC, and they have been very actively involved, but not only involved for our group, but making sure within our peers we did it. So we were speaking with Alison about the real estate. We created in Dubai very recently, we signed an agreement with the 3 biggest developers in the UAE to try to put certain norms which will help to create a much more sustainable environment from the real estate. Because if we apply it only to ourselves, to our brand, and to our stores, we would probably be put in an unhealthy competition with our competitors. And if we close the light at midnight and the other keep the light open, they can become more attractive. But we don't need to keep the light open more than a certain time. If we are mindful how we build our stores, what we use, what we don't use, what is durable, etc., and we have certain norms which put to ourselves, we hope and expect that the other will gradually put them also in place, and so on. I would say so we are very proud of this association, which is working. It's a tough discussion, but it's working quite well with the 3 biggest developer of the UAE.
Well, maybe I know we're just tight on time, but if I could maybe ask you, a lot of my chairmen or chairwomen, they struggle with really what their relationship with the CEO should be. How, first of all, on the tangible side, should they structure, do they meet once a month, once a quarter, once a week? How should they performance manage them? Where do they stop being involved in vision, strategy, these kind of more higher level pieces? Where do they pass the baton across from, hey, this is the intangible element, and now it's time for execution? What is your perspective on those points?
So Shan, first, I would say each organization, each company, each group has its own culture. My first recommendation is to try to do exactly the way the culture has been developed or is transformed. So I don't think that there is one size which fits all. And I will speak about my experience and how I would do it, but it doesn't mean there is no other way which could be more better or less good, but which are more adapted to other culture of group. So in our group, we have always said we trust and empower our people, and at all level. And we started by giving this trust. We don't say the trust is we have to earn it. We say the trust could be lost if you do not exert the trust. And when we say that we empower and we trust people, the first person whom we want to trust is the CEO and empower the CEO, and really making sure that we are not there trying to dictate in the slightest details what is to be done and how it is to be done. So for me, the relation between the chairman and the CEO is a relation where you get more involved into strategic decision, into matters which has an impact or with certain investment over a certain milestone. And on the rest, we are more having a relation of brainstorming, discussing, advising, but accepting the decision of the CEO up to a certain extent. So personally, I meet with the CEO once a month in a very formal way with an agenda and with a minutes of meeting, and where we try to focus on those strategic matter which are more having effect on 3 to 10 years or over 10 years, rather having an immediate effect unless there is a certain crisis situation. And I have a catch up every week with the CEO, an hour catch up by phone or in person, depending if we are in the same geography or not. But this is a catch up where we could discuss of any matter, but it's not a discussion which is conclusive to any decision, more than brainstorming on elements which he wants to bring to my attention or the other way around. I have tried to avoid any contact with any of the ExCom member on an official matter. I will meet with the executive committee members on one-to-one for lunch or for breakfast 2 times or maximum 3 times a year. And I will meet them not to discuss about specifically what they are doing, etc., but to try to somehow boost them and hear them and listen to them. And it will bring my discussion with the CEO in a much better way. On the other hand, the CEO has this discussion with the different advisory board and board committees and the board itself 4 times a year, which by itself is a very structured and very organized. But as I said, the 1 to 3 years is the responsibility of the CEO and the ExCom committee. Over the 3 years, 10 years till 10 years and above is more the responsibility of being validated and discussed by the board, even if it is a strategic committee who will work on it more than anything. Till now, the system functioned very well, and I have tried to move into the system since I was at the same time CEO and chairman, using my board as a kind of chairman. And I felt that we are giving enough of this empowerment, and I'm sure that the CEO will have certain decision where we disagree, and it happened already in the past months. And I will not be here to tell him, you see, I was right, or no, I was no. I will tell him if I was wrong, etc. But to support him in the decision he takes, even if we have brainstorm and move ahead, and accepting, because if you empower people. And a little bit like it was said by Mishal, if you empower people, you have to accept that sometimes they will make a wrong decision, and hopefully they will learn from this wrong decision and move forward. Hopefully they will not create a nuclear bomb, and they have not the ability of doing it. They will do certain things which could be have a negative impact on the structure, on the organization, or on the finance. But they will learn from it and they will move forward. And this is true at every level of the hierarchy. again, as an organization, we have tried to move from a very hierarchical organization when I started the business with my parents to an organization which we try to develop more as an ecosystem where each one of our team members is a cell by itself, and this cell communicates with the other cells. So you have certain organs like the heart or like the brain, which will be more important, or with their cell more important than the other, but there is a collaboration and intercommunication between each cell and the other. So more an ecosystem than a hierarchy where every person have to get things validated by his boss, who will get it validated by his boss, etc. So really this mindset of trust and empowering I was speaking about.
And you know, as you say now, your job as the chairman to look out at this 10-year horizon, where many of us are really just gobsmacked as how do you pick a direction with everything that's going on? And I guess the panel before us, we heard from Dr. Nasser Saidi as he was kind of picking his way through the different narratives that are taking place. And what are some of your perspectives? I know, I think when I met you, I almost fell off my chair when you were saying that you know, Dubai Mall gets more than 100 million visitors, and that, you know, we even have room in Dubai for another shopping mall. Which I guess the numbers are there, but what is your perspective? What are you seeing as you look out? What are the things you're preparing for as a chairman?
So I would say I go from a first assumption: nothing is granted forever, and what is good today might not be good tomorrow. Then I go from another part. You can have a vision on 10 years. You can define a very global strategy. But the most important is to remain extremely agile, because we live in an environment which changes all the time. The law change, the different circumstances change, the society could change, like we have seen in places like Saudi Arabia. The culture of the society have changed, and we need to be quick enough to respond, but keeping in sight what is our direction, our vision on 10 years from now. So we fix more a direction and a vision within the 10 years with, I would say, possible options of moving around, and then we work on it in a very agile manner. So this agility has really to make sure to do. And we often, we will, and today is facilitated by artificial intelligence, we put our projection, but probably based on our past experience, but we also acknowledge that things could change extremely rapidly, and then we will have to be organized and adapt to those possible choices and organization. So yes, I would say we are blessed to be in this part of the world. We are blessed to be in the GCC countries, and I think that we are lucky to have leaders who are extremely visionary, who are not stressed by getting re-elected every year, but who also are very eager to make sure that they are impacting positively their population, and that they are diversifying their economy in different areas, which will be meaningful in the years to come. Because as it was mentioned earlier, probably some of the actual sources of revenue of today will be different into the future. So this adaptation is absolutely key and moving about it. So we adjust our plans to what we have seen as Dubai 33, Saudi Vision 2030, etc., but keeping in mind that those are also vision in order to do it. We are blessed also to have a very young population into this part of the world, and a strong birth rate, but also attractiveness for people to come and establish into this part of the world and having a very good quality of life. So I'm seeing positivity into the years to come, and hopefully this positivity and this optimism will remain, but also a market where competition will be tougher and tougher to absorb. We have to reassess ourselves, and we have to be fast to act and to react in a very proactive way. And the biggest change, I see it in our consumer and in our consumer mind. I will say today's Generation Z in luxury represent about 30-35% of our business. In few years, it will be over 50. A generation Alpha already represent in some of the stores. I'm speaking about the beauty stores, Sephora, and other generation Alpha represent already 5 or 10% of our customer, and they think differently, they move differently, and they are digital born, and we will have to continue adapting to them. So I don't see the future that it will be a straight line, and we have to be prepared to accelerate if there is an acceleration, and we have to be prepared also to slow down and to adapt if there is a slowdown, like we have seen, expecting the unexpected. Well, like we have seen when there was the Iraqi invasion or the COVID or the economic downturn in 2008, 2009, and making sure that we could remain sustainable.
Well, thank you so much. You know, I could spend another hour with you, but I know you have a business to run and you have people to look out for. There's thousands of people counting on you, and it was just an amazing listening to your journey, how the love of France has spawned such a fruitful endeavor here in the Middle East, sprouting from Damascus. With Christophe as your brand, and you know, I got a lovely gift from you from Christophe here as well, so thank you. And how you know, all of these geopolitical challenges, which we know now we're facing some uncertain ones, actually were some of the biggest opportunities for your business, and that you were able to turn some of these challenges into opportunities. And the size of this business is just massive, and as you've grown in the evolution of your business from having advisory board members to full NEDs, and the kind of culture that you focused on creating, and you talked a little bit about the importance of being agile and our ability not just to identify the issues, but create a culture that's able to adapt and change. It's just a few of the golden nuggets, as my friends would say, that you've given us, and then a little touch on the future and how the different generations are coming, this digital generation coming up. So a lot to think about, and I just wanted to thank you so much for your time. It was really awesome listening to you.
Thank you, Shane. Probably I forgot one thing, speaking about the future, is really this fantastic collaboration we have in this part of the world between the public and the private sector. It's quite unique in the world. There is a real collaboration between the private and the public sector, which is really very helpful in order to shape the market for the future, which also is very helpful for the future. Thank you, Shane. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Merci.
Thank you. And thanks to all our audience who tuned in. I think we had people from all over the world, Africa, Europe, of course, a lot of us here in the Middle East. And so thank you so much for listening. And the recording will be available if yourself were thinking of becoming a certified board member, or you wanted any help with your boards. We obviously have a lot of experts here who would be happy to help. I hope you enjoyed the perspectives as much as I have. Some very interesting professionals here today, and I look forward to catching up with all of you in the near future. Shukran and
Thank you,
ma salama.